When we die, why are we cremated? First of all, interestingly, fire itself does not create pollution. It depends what goes in the fire. Fire itself is not a pollutant. If you sit at the yagna fires that take place, they're actually supposed to purify the atmosphere. There's actually a whole science of organic gardening by yagna fires. That literally there is something about Agnihotra, if done in a specific way that I'm not familiar with the details of it, actually keeps the area free of all of the pests that eat your plants so that you can have a beautiful and successful organic harvest. So fire itself is not a pollutant. The problem becomes what we put in the fire. So when we're putting trash in the fire, for example, that's horrible for the environment. Horrible. People think, oh, I've burned it. Great, now it's gone. No. I've just turned something that was ugly on the ground into something that's actually toxic in the air. So not only haven't I solved a problem, but I've actually created more of a problem. In terms of cremating people when they die, the way that it's done with the camphor, with the ghee, is actually not something that creates pollution. The pollution that we worry about with regard to cremations is when they're not fully cremated. Because it takes a lot of wood to fully cremate a body. It usually takes about 600 kgs of wood to fully cremate a body. I mean, that's huge. A lot of people don't have the kind of money to pay 600 kilograms worth of wood. So they burn the body kind of halfway and then dump the rest into the water. That pollution becomes something very worrying. Additionally, having to cut down all the trees for 600 kgs of wood per person also adds to pollution because the trees are what clean our atmosphere. So by removing the trees that clean the atmosphere, we're indirectly leading to pollution. Now there's a solution for this actually. That's a bit of wonderful science that Puja Swamiji is working with and has inspired scientists to be developing, which is a form of a green crematorium. Because see, here's the thing. In the Hindu tradition, it's believed that the body has to be cremated because it returns back to its oneness with God. It's not a tradition that buries bodies. And the other point is we don't have that much land in any case. So keeping in mind people's religious sentiments, because I'm not sure that you're going to convince over 1 billion people to change the tradition of cremation. But there is a solution, which is something called a green crematorium, which instead of taking 600 kgs, takes 100 kgs. Now, ideally, people would be cremated electrically, which is how it's done abroad. But in this country, people are not usually very prepared to do that. There's an attachment to the performing of the sacred rites that can only be done if somebody's actually burning right in front of you. So we say, okay, second best case. If we don't and here, when you're dealing with places where electricity goes out all the time, an electric crematorium is actually also not ideal because what you end up with in many, many cases is a backlog of bodies to be burned because the electricity's gone out. So the green crematorium requires 100 kgs approximately of wood instead of 600. It's still the full traditional way, but it's set up in such a way that the fire actually becomes hotter. And so it burns much faster. And it burns much more fully and completely, so the body is completely burned. So that's one innovation that we're working on. But your way of thinking is wonderful, really wonderful. We need more youth like you. And I'll give you a job. The most pollution that comes from fire in this country comes from two things. Number one, the burning of trash. And number two, the burning of agriculture waste that the farmers do. So the harvest is done. They've harvested their wheat. Now they've got all this agriculture waste and nothing to do with it. So what do? They burn it. This is why in Delhi, in November, December time, the pollution is so much worse than the rest of the year, because that's the time of the harvests in Haryana, in UP, in the bordering states where the farmers are burning all of the remains from their crops. Now, there's an innovation for that as well, which I won't go into all the details of here, but it's called AgriBoard, and it's a fantastic new innovation that, again, we're working with the people who are bringing it to this country. It forms like plywood sheets that you can build houses with, you could build anything with. They are fireproof, waterproof, earthquake-proof, and they are made out of all of this agricultural waste that gets compressed at such a force that it compresses so tightly that literally you could put a blowtorch on it and it won't catch fire. So solutions are there, but the job that I give you is, as you go through school, as you have projects to do, as you have choices to make, think about what to do with all the trash in this country. Because we have all of these wonderful movements about cleaning up the country, which is fantastic. People now, it's now cool to have a broom in your hands, where like a few years ago, nobody would be caught dead with a broom. Now it's, selfie with broom, and it's great. It's really, really it's great. The way that Narendra Modi ji has, through this Swachh Bharat program, has turned something that was sort of scorned and looked down upon, only those people sweep. Suddenly, people couldn't get enough selfies of themselves sweeping, and not just sweeping their homes, sweeping the streets, sweeping gutters. He's literally turned sweeping into something that is cool, which is fantastic. The only dilemma is we still don't have places to put it all. So we have dump yards, and the dump yards are overflowing. And the dump yards in certain places are in the forest. And the dump yards are creating, toxins that leach into the soil. Then it rains. Then the water that goes down onto the junkyard carries those toxins into the groundwater, ultimately into the rivers. It becomes part of our drinking water, becomes part of the water then that's used to irrigate fields. And so what this country is going to need from your generation is solutions of what to do with the trash other than burning it. Because then all we're doing is we're substituting ground pollution to air pollution. In America, for example, for decades, I'm 47 now. When I was a teenager, so we're going back 30 years at least, I was buying cowboy boots that were made out of what looked like leather, but actually was made out of recycled tires and bottle caps and things like that. I was a hardcore vegan already, and so I wasn't buying leather or anything like that. And even at that time, decades ago, it was very, very easy to find things that were being produced by recycling waste, but not all waste. Now, slowly, technologies are coming in, but they're not coming into India very, very quickly. I mean, for example, we don't even have glass recycling here. Forget recycling of polythene. You know, things that exist, the technology that has existed for decades, still isn't implemented in the vast majority of places. I'm sure Delhi has places for glass recycling, but right here, we don't have it. Not glass, not paper. The way we recycle is we use the backside. I mean, literally, it's what we do. Use the whole paper. So, yes, technologies slowly are being invented, but they've got to be implemented. And there are going to be technologies that may work in some places and not all. And the challenge for your generation is what to do with this trash. And I love how aware you are that burning it is not the answer, that that's just going to kill us all in a different way. But we need an answer, because the answer isn't just bigger and bigger dump sites that are breeding grounds for more and more illnesses, more and more disease, that tend to border our slum areas, right? And so then people are getting sicker and sicker. So as you have projects and tasks and things in school to work on, figure out what can we do instead of burning it.